I want to ask you a question. Look at these three statements, and I want you to remember the one that most describes you. Keep it in your head, we'll come back to it later. What if I told you that there is a career out there where you can finally answer the questions that you had about us? Questions like, why don't we like change? Why do we feel the need to conform to the normal? What would an individual do if they had to make a decision that could end someone's life? Why did your father leave? Okay, maybe not that last one, but what I just described is the everyday life of a psychologist. Now, psychology itself isn't quite understood by most, and that's understandable. Psychology is a difficult subject to comprehend and understand. But boiling it down, psychology is the study of how we think, feel, and behave. We as humans are confusing, we're unpredictable, and at most times, stupid. But there are people out there who try to make us a little less confusing. People who try to understand us just a little better. Whether that's through research or conducting experiments, psychologists play an important role in today's society because of the questions they ask. Do people respond better to images of urban areas or nature? Which color makes people happy the most? Are children more creative than adults? These are all real studies, by the way, including the one that found that when 1,600 children took a NASA test to record levels of divergent thinking in the subjects, 98% of them scored genius levels, while when adults 25 and older were tested, only 2% of them scored genius levels. It's honestly insane how people manage to come up with this stuff. Now you may be thinking,
Alright, that's all fine and dandy, but I heard a psychologist treats mental illnesses. So what does a psychologist actually do?
well, don't worry, I'm getting to that, you baby, you absolute child. While psychologists do help mental health patients with general counseling and diagnosing, they can't prescribe medicine like a psychiatrist can. Psychologists can work privately with clients to help treat mental illness or in a non-clinical practice such as research. Now that you know what a psychologist is and does, let's get into education. If you wanted to become a psychologist, you would need to get your master's or doctorate degree, if you're extremely dedicated, which could take anywhere from 6 to 10 years to get. Once you've graduated, to actually start practicing, you need to become licensed, which varies from province to province in Canada. Becoming a psychologist is a rigorous process, but pays off in the end, because you get to help people via clinical psych, or bettering the world's understanding about ourselves through experimental psych, which is the funner one because you can conduct experiments with people as your subjects. Or animals if that's more your thing. Psychologists in Canada make around $70,000 to $110,000 a year, so it should be an easy task to pay off the hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt you'll be in. Now, to become a psychologist and graduate with your PhD, you're going to need a school to graduate from. Canada has some of their best psychology programs, with its top schools for psychology being the University of Toronto, University of British Columbia, and McGill University. To succeed in the field of psychology, it's important to have problem-solving skills, patience, empathy, and a passion for learning. As a psychologist, you need to ask questions often and conduct research and experiments to find those answers. One such question could be, if we limited people's time on social media, can we find a connection between increased depression rates to more time spent on social media? Now, obviously, that is a very extreme and very specific example, but it is something that can be answered through experimentation. One such experiment was actually conducted in November of 2018 at the University of Pennsylvania. Researchers Rachel Marks, Courtney Lipson, and Jordan Young took 143 participants and had them take a survey to determine their well-being before the test started, plus shared a screenshot of their battery usage to provide a week's worth of data on their social media usage. The participants were placed either in a control group where they had to maintain their habits, or an experimental group where they were limited to 10 minutes per platform per day on Facebook, Snapchat, and Instagram. Every subject sent in their time spent every week so the researchers could keep tabs on them. The study ran for 3 weeks. Then all of the participants took the survey again. They found that the group who had limited time on social media reported to be happier and felt less lonely than at the beginning of the study. The results were even more prominent in participants who were more depressed when coming into the study, compared to the control group who felt about the same if not more depressed when they first entered the study. While the study didn't find how long people should be on social media, it did conclude that longer time spent on social media can lead to loneliness and symptoms of depression. When it comes to psychology, learning is key, and there is no such thing as wanting to learn the wrong thing. Every test and experiment is right in its own way. Some may be more beneficial than others, while some may involve just shocking dogs to see if they'll just accept the pain or not. Yes, that is a real experiment, and much more complicated than that. Most of these studies have actually benefited our understanding and have even played a major role in lawmaking in recent years. One example is the study of advertising and how it affects the minds of children. During August in the year 2000, as the result of a growing concern that advertising may influence children in a negative way, the American Psychological Association established the Task Force on Advertising and Children. Which sounds cool until you realize it's just a bunch of boring smart people with degrees. Now hold on, why was advertising such a concern back then? Well, a brief history, if you will. Advertising has been around for millennia, dating back to ancient Rome. In the 19th century, merchants would advertise on the streets, but people are hard to convince, unless you know how to do it. So merchants decided to target a different group of people, children. This was until the British Parliament passed legislation in 1974 to protect children from merchants convincing them to buy products and assume debt. But advertising wasn't seen as a lucrative business venture at the time, because there weren't many ways you could advertise, until the invention of radio and television. Advertising went through the roof and everyone wanted in on the action. And with that, advertisers realized they can utilize the channels solely dedicated to children's programming to advertise. Advertisements were being embedded into the programming itself. At one point, you'd be watching the Flintstones, and then they'd be selling you cigarettes, though laws were passed to prevent that. Point is, advertising to children exploded in the 90s, and parents and psychologists were worried. History lesson over. Cut back to present day. The task force was sent out to find advertisers, uncover their shady practices, and take them down. Okay, no, it was nothing like that. It was more of a bunch of people talking to experts and conducting studies. But what they found was that children below the ages of 4 and 5 years old cannot differentiate between advertisements and programs, and found that most children below 7 and 8 years old don't know that advertisements are meant to convince you to buy something. Because of these studies, there have been multiple laws put in place to prevent advertisers from using this confusion between program and advertisement to their advantage. Now I want to cover one last thing that really interests me, and I think will interest you too. I want to touch on why people believe in astrology so much, that they're willing to believe it can define someone's whole personality. Now, quick disclaimer to everyone who believes in astrology and the zodiac, it's not real. I know, it's disappointing. As I mentioned before, humans are extremely complicated, and even psychologists don't understand all that much about personality psychology. But we're smart enough to know that you can't define someone's personality by what month they were born in. Correlation does not equal causation. But why do people believe in this? I mean, this website describes me perfectly. Why yes, I love to come up with ways on how to change the world. And wow, I do have many friends. Oh wait, no I don't. But why is it when we read about our zodiac or take a personality test that they seem to describe us perfectly? Well, if any of this has happened to you before, then you've fallen victim to the Barnum effect. What is the Barnum effect? Well, it's what keeps horoscope companies and tarot readers in business. Attributed to showman P.T. Barnum, the Barnum effect is the phenomenon that occurs when individuals believe that personality descriptions apply specifically to them, though the descriptions provided are pretty vague and generic. In an experiment conducted in 1948 by psychologist Bertram R. Forer, he asked students to take a written personality test, in which they were to rank the statement from 1 to 5, 1 being strongly disagree and 5 being strongly agree. Once they turned in their tests, Forer would give the students a description of their personality, and ask the students to rank it 1 to 5 in accuracy. The students rated the description with an average rating of 4.3 in accuracy. Well, why is this important? Well, because the descriptions that Forer gave to the students were all the same. It's been shown that the phenomenon is more prominent in generic statements that are kinder and nice, compared to statements that are mean. Now, remember the statements I showed you earlier? Now, I'm willing to guess that you chose the second, more nice statement, unless you're a psychopath that actually enjoys hurting people. Hey there, thanks for watching this video. I hope I could at least show you some of the wonderful things about the study of psychology. I'm glad you could join me. but if you'll excuse me, I'm really tired and I want to go to bed. The door's over there. Okay, bye.